Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We're from group 5. We will present our presentation about gerund, infinitive, and passive voice. And the member of the group is me, Fiska Octavisa, and the second Angeli Tiara, and the third Jed Cinta, and the fourth Fadila Widianiza Putri HS, and the fifth Gila Akbar, and the last is Belladonna Anissa Reva. Today we will explain what is gerunds and gerunds, infinity, and passive voice. That's our presentation. Okay, let's get moved to the material.
Okay, so I will explain about introduction for our presentation, of course. So in our table of contents we have 3 parts of material. Okay, so the first part is about introduction. In introduction we explain about descriptive text and prescriptive text. Okay, maybe I will explain a little bit about what is descriptive text and what is prescriptive text. So descriptive text is a type of writing that aims to vividly describe a person, place, object, or event. Its purpose is to paint a detailed picture in the reader's mind using sensory details and expressive language. Descriptive text provide objective information and create a sensory experience, allowing readers to visualize and understand the subject better. Okay, next is prescriptive text. Prescriptive text, on the other hand, focus on giving instructions, guidelines, or recommendations. It aims to prescribe a specific course of action or behavior to achieve a desired outcome. Prescriptive text can be found in manuals, recipes, rules and regulations, and self-help books. They provide clear and concise instructions using imperative verbs and a direct writing style. Okay, so this is about introduction. Okay, the second part of our table of content is about gerund, infinitive. So, gerunds are verb forms that act as nouns and end in ing. They are used to express actions or activities as subjects or objects in a sentence. Infinitives, on the other hand, are the best forms of verbs, often preceded by the word to. Okay, to, not to. They can function as nouns, adjectives, or adverbs. Infinitives are used to indicate purpose, intention, or to describe actions in a general sense. They are often used after certain verbs. Okay. Last or number 3 from our table of content is about passive voice. Okay, so the passive voice is a grammatical structure in which the subjects of a sentence receive the actions rather than performing. In passive voice sentence, the object of an active voice sentence becomes the subject, and the verb is changed to its passive from using the auxiliary verb be plus the past participle of the main verb. Passive voice is used when the focus is on the action, when the doer is unknown or unimportant, or to create a formal tone. However, active voice is generally preferred for direct and concise communication. Okay, I think that's all from me about table of content. So, the next material, or the first material about introduction, will explain by my friend. Thanks for moderator.
Okay, the first material is introduction of grammar. The first grammar is descriptive grammar. What is descriptive grammar? Descriptive grammar is a set of rules about language based on how it is actually used. In a descriptive grammar, there is no right or wrong language. For instance, a language describing English might formulate rules such as this. Some English speaker end sentence with a preposition. If, for example, who do you want to speak to? And the second is some English speakers use double negative for negation. For example, I don't have nothing. And the third, adjective precede the noun they modify. For example, red book, nice guy. And the fourth, to form the plural of a noun, add s, for example, is one room, two rooms, one book, two books. And the last is the vowel sound in the word sweet is produced with round lips. And the second is prescriptive grammar. This grammar is a set of rules and example dealing with the syntax and word structures of a language. It is an aid to the learning of the language. Prescriptive grammar refers to the structure of a language as certain people think it should be used. For example, the subject of a sentence must agree with the verb, and the sentences is the instruction are clear, not the instructions is clear. And the second, use much for count nouns, use many for non-count nouns. For example, is we don't have much coffee and we don't have many cup of coffee. The third is capitalize the first letter of a sentence. For example, is the television is broken. It needs to be fixed. And the verb is use subject pronouns after the verb be. For example, it was I who called you, not it was me who called you. And the last is use the definite article the before names of rivers and geographical areas, but not before the names of lakes or continents. For example, is the Nile, the Middle East, and Lake Tahoe, and Asia. The advantage and disadvantage of descriptive grammar. First is advantage. The advantage of descriptive grammar is descriptive grammars help learners to speak and write like a native speaker. It reduces the confusion of learners when they speak with a native speaker, but it is not appropriate for beginner learner because the rules are not precise. And the disadvantage from descriptive grammar is it is difficult for teacher to decide which language, which dialect, which usage of a language to teach. If the teacher choose the most used dialect of the target language, student will have difficulty in communicating with a native speaker from a different part of the country. And the last is advantage and disadvantage from prescriptive grammar. The first is advantage from prescriptive grammar. If the learners know prescriptive grammar rules, it will be easier for them to write in the target language. Prescriptive grammar produces better writer. And disadvantage from prescriptive grammar is if the prescriptive grammar is taught, learners will be confused when they talk with a native speakers. They will realize that natives do not use the rules in the grammar books. People who learn prescriptive grammar cannot be able to speak or write like a native speakers because they only use standard grammar books and they do not know how the native speaker use the language and feel bored of learning grammar rules all the time because prescriptive grammar mostly deals with rules. Thank you. Next.
1. Ground. Introduction. This study explores is using and the function or ground and infinitive. Definition and characteristic. Ground. There are verb from and that end in ing and function as noun. Infinitive. There are the best form of verbs, usually preceded by the participle to and the can also function as nouns. Subject roles. Ground and the infinitive can serve as subject of sentence taking on the role of the performer or the receiver of the action. Their use is determined and the verb that are thus associated with the verb patmos. Some verbs are followed by the ground or subject indication that perform of the action. Swimming is my favorite hobby. Other verbs are followed by the infinitive as subject expressing and that unconscious state. To study is the essential of success. Factor in full use. There are no fixed rules dictating when to use ground of infinitive as subject, context verb type, and the Indomesic expressing by the syntactic rule. Determining which form is the approach. Use with the modal verb. Ground are the use with the modal verb to express ability, observe the permission, see can this acting the called. Infinitive are used with the modal verb to indicate interaction possible or the nature. Experience it perfect ground of the commonly used to express performs or the interest. I enjoy swimming in the ocean. Infinitive are used to express performance when the subject infinitive or collection. Verb complement, ground and the infinitive are also be used the object verb following specific verb parent. Verb can take either the ground of the infinitive as object depending on the intended meaning. Conclusion. In the conflict between the ground infinitive as the subject depend on the verb on text can the intended meaning of verb complement, ground and the infinitive are also be used the object verb following specific verb parent. Verb can take either the ground of the infinitive as object depending on the intended meaning. Conclusion. In the conflict between the ground infinitive as the subject depend On the verb, on text can the ancient meaning of the sentence. Understanding the advanced function of the ground. The sentence running had enjoy you can also add a verb at a final param to the modality ground. A ground on the tree class where the clan prep support basin. Which function as noun can conjugate with single word or persist.
Okay, I will explain about the four types of gerunds and phrases. Follow. The first one is subject. For example, gardening is my favorite hobby. And the explanation from gardening is normally a verb, but here it is the name of an activity. Next, gardening in the summertime is a challenge because of the heat. And the explanation is the gerund is followed by a modifying adverbial phrase, forming a gerund phrase. Next, number two is direct object. My neighbors admire my gardening. And the explanation, the admiration is not for the action of the gardening, but the result of the actions. Next, number three, there is objection of prepositions. I have received several awards for my gardening, and the explanation, the awards have been given for the results of an activity. Some people consider my interest in gardening and is an obsession. And the explanation, the gerund phrase is gardening is an obsession. Next, number four, subject complements. My favorite hobby is gardening. Again, gardening is described as something done, not the act of doing it. The statement is inverse of the first sentence. In this group, um, here, my favorite hobby is the subject, and the gardening is it a compliment? And I do my gardening in the morning. The explanation, the phrase gardening in the morning is the subject complements.
Hello guys, my name is Jinjinta Susana Yunusa. So in this opportunity, I will explain about passive voice. So the definition of passive voice is there are two voices in transitive verbs, the active and the passive, based on Hamiza's statement on 2019 and Clemmer on 2000 and Orsek and Hawkborn. So the use of the passive voice is often recognized as one of the most difficult aspects of English grammar. Uh, and this is to master the English grammar. Students have a difficult time understanding the passive voice since the sentence structure is not in a typical position and the emphasis of the sentence has shifted. In addition, uh, based on Cantong's statement on 2011, asserted that the students have a number of challenges while attempting to acquire the English passive voice. To begin, there is a circumstance in which it is appropriate to use the passive voice. The first thing worth noting is that the passive voice requires the use of the auxiliary verb, like be. The second important point to note is that the passive voice should use the past participle form of the primary verb. The third feature is that a sentence written in the passive voice often conclude with the word that is by, which performs the same role as the subject in active voice sentence. And the fourth point is the complement, which appears in the active voice, may take on the role of the subject when used in the passive voice. And the formula for passive voice is subject plus verb be plus past participle. In addition, based on Cowan's statement in 2018, outlined the challenge associated with using the concept of passive voice as follows. A. Students have a difficult time understanding the change in place because the object of the active voice becomes the subject of the passive voice. B. The verb form for passive voice is the past participle, and some of the students are caught off guard by the change in verb form. C. The decision of whether or not to provide information on the object of the sentence might also be difficult at times. D. Even though the structure of passive voice is straightforward, it is not easy to understand and may be challenging to implement in a variety of tenses. Point E. Using the passive voice should not be done without careful consideration since it often leaves out information about the agent. And the following are the obstacles that students face while utilizing passive voice. The first is the subject and the object of the sentence have switched place. The students are under the impression that the subject of a sentence is the agent, despite the fact that this is not the case. Consider the following scenario. This is the example. A man was attacked by three women. And the second is the use of the to be or auxiliary verb. The auxiliary verb that comes before the past participle might be skipped by the students. For instance, England was eliminated by Costa Rica. And in this sentence, students will sometimes use the verb in the right sentence. In the right tense. And then just follow it up with the word by. Consider, for instance, the film made by Scores. And in this sentence, students have a propensity to leave off the auxiliary verb be, which is the most prevalent issue that arises while using the word. And the last is the verb change. Students may not utilize the past participle form of the main verb. The construction of passive voice involves changing the tense of the verb to be, which is then followed by a past participle. For instance, the song is sung by me. That's all my explanation about passive voice. Thank you.
Okay, I want to continue. The material is about passive voice. So passive voice is used when we want to emphasize the action or the verb and the object of a sentence rather than subject. This means that the subject is either less important than the action itself, or that we don't know how or what the subject is. So I want to explain you about the example of passive voice. One is my crops were destroyed by him. My crop is object, where is to be, destroy is a verb of verb 3, by him. Him is a subject. 2. My food was dropped by him. My food is an object, was is to be, drop is verb 3, by him is a subject. And 3. The ice cream was thrown away by me. The ice cream is an object, was is to be, thrown away is a verb 3, by me is subject. 4. The shoes were bought by my father for her. The shoes is an object, were is to be, bought is verb 3, and
my father for her is the subject. And then 5, the cake was made by my mother. The cake is object, was as to be, made as verb, by my mother is a subject. 6, the kitchen is cleaned by my mother once a week. The kitchen is object of the sentence. Is to be, clean as verb, by my mother is the subject, and once a week it's adverb of time. 7, the letter is being written by Sonia. The letter is subject, is to be, being is to be, written as a verb, by Sonia is a subject. 8, the motorcycle was repaired by my father. The motorcycle is object, was is to be, repair is verb 3, by my father is subject. 9, Lagoy by beach has been visited by many tourists. Lagoy by beach, this is an object. Has been like to be. Visit as verb, by many tourists is subject. And then 10, the Zoom will be finished by Mrs. Anna at 3 p.m. The Zoom is an object. Will be like a to be. We'll use will be. And finish is verb, by Mrs. Anna is subject. At 3 p.m. is adverb of time. And then 11, the cake was baked by my sister. The cake is an object. The cake is object, was is to be, bake is verb 3, by my sister is subject. And then 12 is the car was repaired by this mechanic. The car is object, was is to be, repair is the verb 3, by the mechanic is subject. And then 13, the book was written by a famous author. The book was written by a famous author. The book is the object. Was is to be, written is a verb, by a famous author is a subject. And then 14 is the house was built by a team of skilled workers. The house is an object, was is to be, built is a verb 3, verb, and then by a team of skilled workers, this subject. And then last is 15, is the movie was directed by an award-winning filmmaker. The movie as an object, was is to be, direct is to be, is a verb, and by an award-winning filmmaker is a subject. So it's all that I can explain about example of passive voice. Thank you.